February 14th, Valentine's Day, a day when people give each other gifts of romance. But on February 14, 1986, someone would get a life-saving Valentine that he would never forget. That person got a heart transplant, but you'll never guess who helped? It was none other than the United States Air Force. In this unbelievable story, sourced from the Everything Military Aircraft website, the Aviation Geek Club, we will go over how a man who needed a heart transplant, who got a special Valentine courtesy of the Air Force, which was delivered by an F-111 fighter bomber on Valentine's Day. A supersonic Valentine's Day. How an F-111 saved a life on February 14th.
Bravo 6. Going dark.
On February 14, 1986, a 48-year-old New York man received a most unusual Valentine's Day flight. A new heart, courtesy of the 509th Bombardment Wing. The unique humanitarian mission was flown by FB-111 Acrew S-03 that transported a donor heart from Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, to Hartford, Connecticut. As told by Sergeant Stephanie Dunner, 509th Bomb Wing Public Affairs. In the article, crews make Valentine's Day delivery. Captain David R. Lefferge, aircraft commander, and Captain Stephen J. Brugger, radar navigator, both with the 393rd Bombardment Squadron, were on a regular training mission when they were rerouted for a life-saving mission. Richard Reinhardt, a patient in Hartford Hospital in Hartford, Connecticut, desperately needed a heart transplant to survive. A donor heart was available for him, but it was in Oklahoma City, 1,415 miles away. Because there were no commercial or medical aircraft available which were capable of transporting the heart to Hartford in the time required, the U.S. Air Force was called upon to assist. At 7:22 p.m., one FB-111 and one KC-135 aircraft took off from Pease, heading for Tinker Air Force Base, Oklahoma. An hour later, a second FB-111 departed Pease to serve as backup. Flying at just under 700 miles per hour, not quite the speed of sound, the first FB-111 landed at Tinker. It was 10:35 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The donor heart was transported from Presbyterian Hospital in Oklahoma City to Tinker. The FB-111, its precious cargo secure on the navigator's lap, was airborne once more by 3 a.m. The race was on. According to Jim Battaglio, Director of Communications at Hartford Hospital, for hours or less from the time the donor heart is removed from the donor until it begins beating in the recipient's chest provides the optimum chance of acceptance of the donor organ by the recipient. Captain Lefferge said that during the mission, he and Captain Brugger concentrated their attention on the details of their flight plan and transporting the heart.
It was Valentine's Day. We had this heart. We were going to save someone's life.
Captain Lefferge said in an interview after the flight.
After we figured out what it all meant, it was pretty sobering. I was sitting there with it in my lap. We just kind of looked at each other.
Captain Brugger added.
I know I'll remember this for a long time.
Captain Brugger carried the container holding the heart on his lap because it was the only place in the cockpit where the heart could fit. It had to be transported in the cabin of the aircraft because this is the only area which is pressurized. The FB-111 landed at Bradley Air National Guard Base in East Granby, Connecticut at approximately 5 a.m. A helicopter was standing by to transport the heart to Hartford Hospital. From the time the donor heart was removed until it was transplanted, 3 hours, 59 minutes had elapsed. While the two FB-111 crew members receive a great deal of the credit, it is also important to note that this Valentine's flight was really a team effort. from Captain Robert Keneally, 509th Bombardment Wing Emergency Actions Controller, who took the initial request for assistance in the P's command post, to Colonel Dennis L. Cole, Assistant Deputy Commander for Operations, who quickly located air crews available to handle the mission, to the crews themselves. A lot of hard work and careful coordination helped make the mission a success. Colonel Cole said,
"Everything just fell into place. It was an extremely fortunate set of circumstances."
Captain Keneally commented,
That it all came together on Valentine's Day was the strangest thing of all.
Flying the backup F-111 were Lieutenant Colonel Peter L. Greenewalt, 393rd Bombardment Squadron Aircraft Commander, and Captain Charles G. Sherlin, 715th Bombardment Squadron Radar Navigator. Making up the crew of the KC-135 were Lieutenant Colonel Brent E. Chapman, pilot, Captain Leon Giot Solis, co-pilot, Second Lieutenant Stephen M. Tucker, navigator, Major Sergeant Edward W. Jackson and Airman Daniel O. Wells, boom operators, all with the 509th Air Refueling Squadron. Now hold up. Let's go all the way back to the beginning, before all this even happened. This story requires more context, like who is Richard Reinhardt, and what happened to him that made this whole story happen in the first place. Let's go ahead and cover that. Mr. Reinhardt was 48 years old with a wife and 2 children and was a letter carrier for the U.S. Postal Service. He began suffering heart problems around the age of 43. On January 16, 1986, he was admitted to the hospital and placed on the heart waiting list. On Friday, March 21, 1986, Mr. Reinhardt was able to shake hands with Captains Brugger and Lefferge at the Hartford Hospital, and the following day, he was sent home, 5 weeks after the surgery. Mr. Reinhardt spent years taking medication to prevent rejection of his heart, and one of the side effects was an increased risk of cataracts. By 1989, he had already had 1 cataract surgery and was expecting to have it done on his other eye. Despite the issues following his surgery, Mr. Reinhardt lived 23 years with his transplant heart. He passed away on April 19, 2009, survived by his wife, 2 children, and 4 grandchildren. Originally known as the TFX, or Tactical Fighter X, the F-111 was conceived to meet a U.S. Air Force requirement for a new tactical fighter bomber. In 1960, the Department of Defense combined the U.S. Air Force's requirement with the Navy need for a new air superiority fighter. The USAF's F-111A first flew in December 1964, and the first production models were delivered to the U.S. Air Force in 1967. Meanwhile, the Navy's F-111B program was canceled. In all, 566 F-111s of all series were built. 159 of them were F-111As. Although the F-111 was unofficially referred to as the Aardvark, it did not receive the name officially until it was retired in 1996. An interesting feature of the aircraft was its variable geometry wings. While in the air, the wings could be swept forward for takeoffs, landings, or slow-speed flight, and swept rearward for high-speed flight. The F-111 could also fly at very low level and hit targets in bad weather. The FB-111 was a bomber version of the F-111 fighter, featuring advanced avionics. And there you have it. That was the true and unbelievable story of a heart transplant that otherwise would have failed, or even never happened, if it wasn't for the U.S. Air Force. This was an interesting story to cover. It took quite a bit to put together, but I got it done. I wanted to do a special project for Valentine's Day, and I felt that this was an appropriate story. I want to end this video with a note. Nothing like this has ever been done before, and likely never will, ever again. If it wasn't for the stories from the pilots, doctors, and everyone else involved, this story would be lost to time. So it is important that even the most insignificant of stories must be preserved to show what we as humans are capable of, something that doesn't involve violence. And with that said, thank you for watching the video. Leave a like on the video and subscribe for more amazing content. I am Stealth Operator, and I will see you in the next video. Happy Valentine's Day.